Hi, everyone. Uh, in a lot of my posts, I talk about starting plans and setting defaults, and I thought I'd go through that process. Now, I haven't written an outline or anything. It's just in my head. Of course, I've been doing this a long time, so I'll probably get most of the steps correct. We'll see. I'm just going to go, and this is Home Designer Pro 10. But the procedure would be basically the same in any Home Designer title. Just going to click on New Plan. And I don't use these templates and so forth. I know a lot of you do. And that's because Pro is limited in its choices in terms of settings and so forth. In Chief Architect, which I mainly use, this sort of thing doesn't matter. But in this screen here, I should point out that this is where you set whether you want to use inches, feet, or imperial measurement units, or metric. That radio button check there, okay? And you can choose one of these templates. I'm just going to use the default style and click OK. It'll give me a blank plan. Now, being a long-time user, when I first started using Chief Architect, and back in the mid-90s, we didn't have this grid and so forth, so I don't use it. So I know some of you guys do. I don't. That's usually the first thing I turn off. The reason I do that is for especially the grid snaps. You can see the tooltip over there on the right-hand side. With that turned on, you can't see it without this visual grid turned on. But the grid snaps have a tendency for objects to want to snap to these grid points where you get the nexus points, the crossing points. And I suppose that's fine. It's just that isn't the way I learned the program, so I don't use this tool. You're perfectly welcome to use it if you want to, but just be aware that it makes objects have tendencies to want to go to those points, and that's not necessarily where I want them to go, so I turn that off. Okay, before I draw the first wall, and in most cases, whether I'm doing a custom home or remodeling, I've spoken to the client, whether that client's a builder or the actual buyer of the home who intends to live in it. And so there's certain things that I know that they want. So I go to the Edit menu and Default Settings. Let's see. I don't see an icon up there for that, so it's Edit Default Settings. I think you can create an icon for default settings if you want, but in here is the majority of all settings for the plan. Like, look at general cabinet. I usually set this to 1 inch. That's just my personal proclivity, okay, based on having used this for a long time. Resize increments 3 inches. That's probably correct because the cabinet, the big box cabinet makers usually do their cabinets increments in 3 inches, and I usually use that. But when I'm editing, I want the freedom of being able to make a cabinet 1 inch thick if I want to. If it's set at 9 inch, that's the way it comes out of the box. Well, then you're limited, and you have to go through a couple extra clicks and steps and so forth. So I set that way. That's not written in stone. That's just a personal bent. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just want to introduce you a little bit to it. We'll look at base cabinets. And there's tabs here which you should take a look at because they all allow you to do things. Probably the one I use the most in setting up default is the appearance of the drawer front and the door, which you have choices here. There's some simple choices, or you can go to the library browser and pick something else. Cabinet drawers and drawer fronts. And then there's more choices here. And that's true. In this graphic, you can see I left click on it, and that selects what I left clicked on. And then left click here, that's the door. These things can be resized. I'm not going to go, this isn't a cabinet tutorial, but I'll just change that value there from 20 3/4 to 12, hit the tab key. And then I can click this space underneath it. It gives what the space's height, and I can assign it something else, like a drawer. Of course, this doesn't make any sense, but just to demonstrate that there's choices that you can make, and this is setting the defaults for base cabinets. And if you know what kind of cabinets, whether it's wall cabinets, full height cabinets, you can set these things up and not have to spend time while you're designing to go back and make changes and so forth. One other thing I'll look at, introduce you to, is we'll look at this wall cabinet. It's basically the same tabs and so forth, but let's take a look at moldings. I'm sure if you use a cabinet right now, there's no molding on it. I'm going to click on Add New. We'll go to Home Designer Pro Content, Architectural, Molding, Crown Molding in this case. I'll click here to get a visual over here. Okay, this one I've used before. The others are still preview. Just for fun, since this is sometimes an issue for new users, I'm just going to left click on this one that I haven't downloaded, and when I click OK, you see a little green thing there. It's downloading it. Okay, now it's actually here, and you see it appear in the little dialog there. And it could be from the bottom. I can put it down here. I'm not going to, but that's what that button's for. Then put it to the top. And then this offset handle. What's that for? Well, let's offset it by 1 inch. I'm going to hit the tab key and watch this. Okay, a positive value forced it down. Let's go from the bottom. See it? And it forces it up, that 1 inch offset. In this case, with moldings, this molding by default is 1 5/8 inches high. Now, this cabinet makers have to attach that molding to the cabinet, so they're going to have to use part of the molding, this edge over here, to attach it. Well, let's make believe that all they need is 1/4 inch. Well, I'm going to set this offset to 1/4 inch. Now watch the graphic when I hit the tab key, and it goes up 1/4 inch. Let's put in a minus value, minus 1/4 inch. I'm going to hit the tab key, and that raised it up a little bit more. So I just need 1/4 inch of this molding to attach it to a cabinet. So let's subtract 1/4 inch from 1 5/8. That's 1 3/8. Let's set that to 1 3/8. Hit the tab key. That's about where the molding should be. It'll clear the door and leave the trim carpenter 1/4 inch to attach it with a brad to the top of the cabinet. That's what these settings are for. I sound like a broken record sometimes that it's all in the settings. It is. And knowing what these settings is very important in terms of getting things done and, keeping your hair from falling out and having arguments with your family and so forth because you're so frustrated. And I recommend to you, I found this out not by reading the manual. I found it out by opening the dialog and messing around with it to see what these settings are for. That's how I learned this program. I didn't go to school. I just confronted what was there and experimented with it until I understood what it did and what it was for. Okay, enough on cabinets. There's other things that you can set here. There's all kinds of defaults in here that you can set, and you should set. You should either set them where it makes sense or at least be aware of what these things mean and what they're for. Let's take a look at, I want to go to Plan Defaults. Click on Edit. And here again, see this grid thing is here and it's not set because I turn it off over here on these icons. Just about all the controls in the software either have icons that are visible or they have dialog boxes like this. A lot of you guys that can't draw a straight wall is because the default is set to 7.5 degree increments. Let me just see, it's under allowed angles or 15 degree. Normally I work with the default there at 7.5. I'm going to click Done out of here. There's an icon that's very important. Where the heck is, oh, there it is, right there. See, angle snaps. Let's take a look at that. I'm just going to grab the wall tool and drag, and it goes nice and straight. And if I move it up, it snaps 7.5 degrees. Each little snap is 7.5 degrees because that's what the default is set to. Let's see. No, that's I need to go to edit default settings. Keep this organized. And see, where was that? I forgot where we were. Oh, plan. Yeah. Okay, let's change this to 15 degrees. And now I'm going to grab this wall and rotate it. And now it's snapping in not 7.5 degree increments, but 15 degree increments. And let's see, just for fun, we'll go over here to the CAD tools. And I'm going to draw a line. And you see it's snapping in 15 degree instead of 7.5 degree increments because I told it to. Okay, now I'm going to take angle snaps and turn it off. Left click on it so it's no longer active. I can take this line here, well, you grab the rotate handle, and you can see I can move it in tiny little incremental, and the same thing with the wall. Excuse me. See, that setting controls two-dimensional objects and three-dimensional objects. So let's just try to draw a straight line with this angle snaps off. And you have to have a very steady hand in order to draw anything straight with angle snaps off. Let's see if I was able to pull that off. I'm going to go to the line style tab of that line, and let's see. Okay, there it is. The angle is 0.0. I got it right. I've seen a lot of plans. Maybe some of you guys didn't know that, but you can open a wall or a line, and it'll give you the length and the wall angle. So like this one's off. So it's 1.193489 degrees. Now I can take this wall here and use the make parallel perpendicular and click on something that is perpendicular and then open that wall, and now it's at 0.0 degrees. But you can also change lines and walls by just direct input. Let's put in 45. I don't know if you guys knew that, but there's different ways to edit objects. We'll do the same thing with this line here. -3. Let's make it -45 degrees, just for fun. Get the idea. So now this line and that wall are perpendicular, and I just changed that by input. So anyway, this angle snap thing is quite important in terms, sometimes I turn it off, and then I turn it right back on. I'll turn it off because I want to be able to incrementally align something. And this tool tends to make that a little bit more difficult, but by the same token, with it on, it makes it quite easy to draw things straight. Okay. Let's go back to defaults.